first speaker is His Excellency Professor Adnan Badran of Jordan, whom you know, but I will just briefly read his background, if he may permit me to, as I make my mistakes get corrected by my colleagues too.
Your time.
Yes, this is, thank you. Well, Professor Adnan Badran is an elected fellow of the Islamic Academy of Sciences. He is served as former Deputy Director General of UNESCO, and also served as Minister of Agriculture and Minister of Education in Jordan, as well as Secretary General of Jordan's Higher Council for Science and Technology, as well as more recently, Minister of Defense, and more importantly, as the Prime Minister of Jordan. Professor Badran is a past president of Yarmouk University. He received his bachelor's degree from Oklahoma State and master's and doctorate from Michigan State. He holds an honorary doctorate from Sungkwang-Yan University of Seoul, Korea. And he is author editor of 18 books and 19 research papers in the field of biology, economic development, education, and international cooperation. And this was on my time.
Thank you, Professor Ali. I think the most important thing here is to realize that it's very difficult to really obtain up-to-date statistics on what is on in science and technology, not only in the Arab world, but also in the OIC countries. So sometimes our data is 2 years to 3 years old. But really, we have launched a program at the Arab Academy of Sciences with the help of Alexo and ICISCO and UNESCO to have really science and technology indicators every 2 years, maximum between 1 year and 2 years. And this will serve as really a base, a foundation for researchers to see where we are going every year in terms of researchers, in terms of engineers, in terms of patents, in terms of published papers, scientific papers, in terms of higher education, in terms of quality, quantity, number of staff, and so forth. But I tried here really to get the best statistics and the most up-to-date, and putting the Arab world before you in terms of its status of science and technology, what is what in S&T and higher education, who's doing what and who's doing none.
Well, maybe because there are more things coming.
Now, obviously, I think very important to link here a little bit with Professor Ernest's lecture when he talked about the divide. And the divide between the poor and the rich, between those who know and those who know not, in a case society and K economy, knowledge society and knowledge economy. It's not really the wealth which counts from now on. It's really what you invest in the brain. Brain intensive, what I call know-how is really the mode of the 21st century. It's not natural wealth, but really it's brain wealth. And to develop brain wealth, the most important thing to bridge this divide between those who have and those who have not, really to bridge it is through education. Education, not any education, but what type of education we are looking for, what we educate for, and the quality of education, the relevance of education, and also the research, particularly science and technology. And then the third item, to link the outputs and delivery of research to industry, to the clients, to the market forces, to the marketplace. This is very important. Here in the Islamic world, we failed. Probably we have succeeded in some university to provide the quality education. The delivery was good. Probably in others we have failed in research. Probably we succeed in research, but we have failed in applying this research, making out of it a technology, a commodity, and making out of it patents, and making out of it commercialization. The link between university and industry, as a matter of fact, we have failed in the OIC countries. Very few examples, success stories here and there, But when you talk about the OIC countries, we failed to link the university research with industry, with the users. And this is, we have to accept that. And this is really what I call a drawback, a great drawback on the university education system. How to develop the country? How could you develop a country if everything in an ivory tower? And the industry do not trust the university researchers, and the researchers, they don't link themselves with the industry. There's no contractual research between those who makes the delivery, who makes the output of research, and those who make use of it to make new products and really to improve what I call their services. Arab region at crossroads. I have to watch my time. Arab region at crossroads. This is very important, and education is the key. The key is not really in numbers. We have grown in numbers in the Arab region. 3.6 million students right now at the universities in the Arab region. It's huge. A number of universities in the OIC, I think 600 universities. In the Arab region, more than 200 universities. And the number is there. Universities in Jordan has grown from 1 university in the early 60s up to now about almost 39 universities. But really what we should talk about is, what do we deliver from our higher education? Do we deliver the quality? Do we deliver the relevance? Not relevance to the need of the country, but relevance to the need of the society at large. Relevance linked to the marketplace. And also in terms of quality and excellence. Do we promote excellence or not? So I think building capacity is merit-based system to promote excellence. The quality education should be linked to the marketplace. But obviously, it doesn't mean that we ignore the objective of education, to develop the ethical, the overall rounded person, the citizenship. Creativity and innovation is lacking. And I think this is very important, that science-based education, do we have it or not? Delivery of entrepreneurs and the R&D linked with industry really to create the demands. The merit-based system to promote excellence. I think this is very important, really, when we look at how to upgrade and promote our educational system. Through scholarship from childhood to career development, special education for gifted students. I think we talked about this morning, the promoting of leadership, how to educate for leadership and inspire excellent students into careers, into the R&D. Science now is not attracting students in the university like they used to. I think we have to really develop somehow a method to really make science more attractive in terms of salaries, in terms of providing excellent laboratories, in terms of providing inspiration to our students to go to science. Science is not attracting anymore the best student on the campus. People who are left out, they come sometime to science. And this is really very dangerous thing when you think that they will be teaching science in high schools, and those who will be the future PhD and researchers really to innovate and create new things in science. Now, quality education is a challenge in the Arab region. How to measure quality education? Now, many universities, they have linked themselves to the QA system in Britain, the Quality Assurance Agency. And the people, they come every year to assess the university system. Some of them, they link themselves to other yardstick in Europe or in the United States. But really, assessment of education and rating the delivery of the higher education system has to be done to create competitiveness. So the universities will compete with each other. And this is where, do we continue on the current system? Well, all universities are governed and ruled by Ministry of Higher Education. Or do we let the university to be autonomous and independent and create, like Turkey did, a board of trustees for each university, whether private or public, and let them compete with each other? Let the board of trustees protect and finance and fund the university and innovate and create, to be creative, where the universities themselves, there will be competitiveness between them, like in the States. In the States, even federal university or state universities, they compete with each other. Why? Because each university has its own board of trustees, and each university is autonomous, and each university is proud of itself to be rated #1 or #2 or #3 in various disciplines. I think this has to be created in the Arab region. You have to create what I call competitiveness, where each one will compete with the other. So this university is well known, the best rated university in physics. That one is well known, the best rated university in biology, and so forth. So governance, we have to look into modernized governance and reform governance in the university, where competitiveness and autonomy in the university system should be created. Creativity and innovations. Yes, we are graduating thousands and millions of students, but how many of them are entrepreneurs? How many they are creative? They come out like Bill Gates came out with nothing except what he has in his brain and developed the software technology, the Microsoft, which is an empire by itself. This is where we lack in the Arab region, to deliver creativity, to deliver innovation. Yes, there are success stories here and there. At the University of Jordan, I know some of the success stories who really made it and made very good corporates and companies, very successful in software. But when you talk about the whole Arab region, the millions we are graduating every year, how many of them become creators and innovators? This is very few. So schooling system has to be changed. Schooling from talqeen dictating, from disseminator. The instructor has to change from disseminator to facilitator of knowledge. In other words, the student has to be structured from the childhood, how to think, how to read, learning to think, learning to read, learning to analyze, learning to judge, learning to solve problems. All this has to come from schooling, where creativity and innovation will be built in within the system of the pupil, of the student. So learning to learn and to develop and create the analytical mind. And this inquisitive mind to discover the unknown and to integrate ICT in the classroom. The classroom and the learning process, the IT should be part of it, but not as instrument or tool to be used alongside the learning process. Self-learning and lifelong learning to transfer knowledge into application and technology. And also to develop research within the mind of students. Science-based education, that one is lacking. I think most of our attention right now at the university system in the Arab region is going outside the science-based education. Here, we need to renovate the education system, to motivate the bright student, and really should sponsor. I like the experiment of Belkent here, where the top student, above 95, they have full scholarship. And this is what should be done at the state universities and governmental universities and even private university in the Arab region, where the cream of the crop, you sponsor them throughout, and to develop the future PhDs, the future R&D, the future scientists with this bright student. And this way you can develop science education and science for all. And this is through assistantship, fellowship, and training. And to develop the North-South and South-South postdoctoral program, and to change the brain drain to a brain gain, as was done when my colleague, Professor Atta Ar-Rahman, talked about it this morning. Entrepreneurs. This is what we lack in the delivery of higher education. Many experiments in Europe has succeeded in Southeast Asia in development of the entrepreneur through co-op with the industry, where the students, while they are learning, they go and work in the industry part-time, in their field, in their area. And also, the university itself provide what you call incubation for the projects of the student, the graduation projects of the student. And those incubation many times are taken by the companies and the corporates to develop what you call the national park, the business park around the university. And through a venture capital, and this has talked about Atta Ar-Rahman this morning, he touched on it, or through the venture capital, you can develop what you call brain industry, brain-intensive industry around the campus. And from there, this will mushroom into output of R&D to develop the whole economy of the country. So R&D linked with industry, this is extremely important. We talked about it. Now, what expenditure in higher education we have in the Arab region? By the way, in the Arab region, we invest very good in higher education. Our region, 5.4% of our GDP per year goes to public universities, and 5% in the industrialized countries. So we invest more than they do in the industrialized country. But really here, the quality is different, and relevance of the education is different. Arab region average per student, $2,400, while in Spain, for example, they spend $14,200. The Arab region tertiary students represent 25% of the eligible population, like 20 to 24. I think in Turkey, we heard this morning, approximately more than 30, probably 31, 32. In Jordan, we reached 35%. The age group, they are in the university system, but really is not really the number which we complain about, but really, again, what to teach and what graduates, type of graduates we want at the end. I think we talked about this. Now, investment in science. In the Arab region, we talked about investment education. The investment education is good, but except the type of education which we are offering to students, this needs reform. The investment in science, the Arab declined from 0.4% to 0.2%. As a matter of fact, during 1979, the Vienna Conference on Science and Technology, the investment, the developing were supposed to reach 1% by the end of the last century. Hasn't reached. We in the Arab region went down from 0.4% to 0.2%, and we're share of 0.2% of the GDP. The Arab investment right now is about $1.2 billion in R&D, and this is very low compared, for example, to Israel, 4.4%, Sweden 3.8%, and European Union 1.9%. India has increased recently to 0.8%. And they boost that they will reach 2% by 2007. But really, the average right now of the world GDP is 1.7%. The world is spending 1.7% of the world wealth on R&D, research and development. OECD spends 80% of the world expenditure on R&D. Brazil, Costa Rica, Cuba spends 0.9% of GDP on the R&D. And here we'll show you the expenditure, some selected countries, as percent of GDP between 1996 and 2003. Malaysia, it really tops the OIC countries in the expenditure on R&D as percentage of their GDP. Iran next, Turkey third, Tunisia, Morocco, Jordan, and the whole countries is here. The R&D expenditure as percent of GDP, again, is shown here as a percentage. There as a percentage of world expenditure, here as a percentage of the gross domestic product of the country. So you can see the OIC Arab is the least, 0.21. OIC average is 0.66. If you take the world average, it's 2.36. So we are way down the Arab region in investing in science and research and development as percentage of our GDP. Who funds what in R&D? In the Arab region, we still, the public sector, the government, support the research and development. Private sector is very weak in supporting R&D. 27% of our R&D done by universities, and 70% by government sector. If you take the OECD country, 70% of the R&D in the OECD is done by the private sector. This is where the strength of the industrialized countries. Most of the research and development is done by the companies, by the corporates, by the private sector. Very little is done by the government. Here, 3% non-profit sector, 17% by universities, and 10% by governmental sector. Again, if you compare to other countries, you find the same thing. Almost 75% of all R&D, whether in the States or other countries, is done by the private sector, by the enterprise, while only 20 to 25% is done by the government sector. And this is why in the Arab region, whenever they lack budget, they go and cut on the R&D. Because cutting on the R&D doesn't show in short term, does not reflect on election, does not reflect on the government performance, because the government performance is sitting there for 1 year to 2 years. So really they cut down the R&D because it doesn't show. It shows afterward, you know, when other people come and so forth. And this is why all the saving in the public expenditure done on science, on teaching, on research, while the private sector, this is his bread and butter. If he doesn't do R&D, he will be out of the industry because you cannot compete. Competition requires R&D. The Arab scientists and engineers, again here is show you the number of scientists. Most scientists in the Arab region are in Egypt, mostly in agriculture and health sectors. We'll show you here the researcher in the Arab region, how if we take this cake here and we cut it to pieces, we can see that basic sciences, only 8% of scientists in the Arab region are in basic science, doing research in basic science. Engineers 6.3, etc. But most the scientists, you find them in really agriculture and health and food. Again, if you take the SCI, Science Citation Index, and you can see where the publication comes from, you will see that scientific and technology are published here. If we take some OIC countries and some Arab countries, you can see the trends in number of publication. Again, this is as a reference to ISI Web of Knowledge Database, and will show the number of papers. Again, Turkey, like was mentioned today, really tops the Muslim and the Arab countries in terms of number of publication, seconded by Egypt, then Iran, Saudi Arabia, Malaysia, Morocco, Lebanon, etc., etc. And you can see the number of publication here, 263, and here about 87,629. Again, if you take scientific and technical journals articles published between 1996 and 2005, and compare OIC to the number published by MIT, also Stanford University, then Greece, then Ireland, and Hungary, and Finland. You can see where, compared to MIT, one university in the United States, you can see where we stand in the OIC. The number of papers published, 275,999 by the OIC. And this is, by the way, which cited. Again, you can publish a lot of papers in local journals. Nobody will listen and hear about them. What is cited in the ISI and SCI, the Science Citation Index, this is what counts. And this includes Social Science Citation Index, Arts and Humanities Citation Index, and Science Citation Index. I have to rush. And here, scientific and technical journals article published in 2000 per million people. The year 2000 per million people. Again, you can see, because Lebanon is a small country, here again, you have to look into the big countries, because per million, number of publication per million people. For example, Kuwait is ahead because small population. And you can look. This is better index than taking the number of papers, to me. Scientific, again here is, this is scientific and technical journal article published in 2000 per million people. Will show you India here, for example. I know there is a lot of paper published by India, but probably because they are 1 billion people, again, probably doesn't show as much as you have, for example, in Switzerland, Israel, and Sweden, Ireland, and Finland. But this will give other countries also a picture of how they stand compared to OIC. OIC is 33.8. You can see at the end, just before India. Scientific and technical journal article published in 2005, again, this will show the thing compared to, for example, OIC. Look at the OIC, 45,000 papers, compared to India, and look to Harvard University. Harvard University, 15,455. Let's see, Yale University is less than probably 7,000 here, 7,000 papers. MIT is less than Yale University. Princeton University is 4,304. Technology output is, again, measured by patents, very low in the Arab region when you talk about patents. And to show you just a few graphs here, share of high technology export and total manufacturing export in the Arab world, and compared to other countries, the OIC is 6.4 here, Arab 3.5, Japan, for example, 24, and you have the East Asia and Pacific 34. This will give you a comparison of the high-tech exports from those countries. Patent application filed by non-residents for between 1997 and 2004. You can see the OIC here, 2,609. India, for example, is written here. And then we go to patent application filed by residents, that one by non-residents, this one by residents. You can see also the differences, OIC compared to the rest of the world. What to do? We have to invest 6% of our GDP in education by 2010. This is very important. Now we are about less than that. The Arab region also has to invest 1% of their GDP really by 2010 in R&D. But this is alone is not enough. We have to reform education. Higher education has to be reformed from childhood to higher education, from childhood to secondary cycle, and to higher education, where emphasis will be really on new methodology of teaching. How to think, how to learn, how to solve problems, how to structure knowledge, and to build skills and knowledge. And we have to strengthen science, mathematics, and languages in education, and computing at early age to build logics and to induce creativity and innovation. We have to have reform policies and legislation to promote quality teaching, only quality teaching, and relevance of teaching, and research in frontier area of science. We have to promote centers of excellence in quality and relevance. Thank you.